Before America became the land of endless roads and shining cities, there was a forgotten town, hidden in shadows and river mist. A single lantern drifting through darkness, carrying a secret the night still remembers. If you love calm, cinematic bedtime stories, take a moment to subscribe so these quiet journeys can find you every night. Now, relax your shoulders, slow your breath, and step with me into the past. The Lanterns of Willow Creek. The year was 1803. The American frontier was raw and untamed, a place where the wind carried stories across endless forests and open sky. Nestled in a valley of tall, whispering trees lay a tiny settlement called Willow Creek. At night, the town fell into a deep silence, the kind of silence that feels alive, as if the land itself is listening. And then, one evening, the silence broke. A soft glow appeared on the water. Not bright, not urgent, just a warm, drifting light. A wooden lantern sliding quietly down the creek, its candle burning steady against the night breeze. People stepped out of their cabins in disbelief. The lantern moved with purpose, not pushed by current, not shaken by wind, as though guided by an unseen hand. The next night, it returned, and the next, always at dusk, always glowing. Whispers spread through Willow Creek. Some said the lantern belonged to a lost traveler searching for home. Others believed it was a message from settlers who vanished during the cruel winter storms. But the lantern offered no answers, only its calm golden light. Time rolled forward. Children grew into parents. Parents grew older. But the lantern never stopped appearing. Storms came. Snow deepened. Seasons changed. But the glow never faded. Then came the winter night that turned the legend into truth. A lone traveler, Samuel Reed, stumbled into town, frozen, trembling, barely clinging to life. He whispered one thing: "I followed a lantern through the trees, or I would have died." The people knew. The lantern wasn't myth. It was a guardian, a quiet protector, guiding lost souls back to safety. Even today, they say if you sit beside Willow Creek when the world is still, you might see it, that same golden light sliding gently along the water, moving with purpose, watching, guiding. A soft reminder that some pieces of history never stop glowing. Now, relax your shoulders, slow your breath, and drift slowly, peacefully into sleep.
The legend of the lantern might have ended there, a single story told by a half-frozen traveler rescued by chance. But Willow Creek had a way of holding on to mysteries, and the lantern's glow was only the beginning. Winter that year settled in heavier than anyone expected. Snow piled along rooftops like silent white mountains. Trees bowed beneath the weight. The creek slowed, thickening with ice, until only a thin ribbon of dark water remained. Yet even then, even in the coldest nights, the lantern appeared. One evening, when the moon hung low and pale, Abigail Turner, the school teacher's daughter, stood at the edge of the water. She had grown up watching the lantern drift past her home, but something felt different tonight. The glow was dimmer, slower, as if struggling against the frozen current. Abigail stepped closer. The woods behind her whispered with wind, and the entire valley seemed to hold its breath. The lantern came near the shore, its candle flickering wildly, almost as if trying to speak. She knelt, letting the cold seep through her wool gloves, and reached toward the wooden frame. Just as her fingers brushed it, the flame died. The lantern went dark, and for the first time in decades, the creek held no glow. People in Willow Creek talked in hushed tones. Some believed the guardian had completed its duty. Others feared something had happened, something the lantern had been trying to warn them about. The elders called a meeting at the old town hall. They gathered around a long wooden table, lit by a few flickering candles. The room smelled of pine, dust, and winter boots drying near the stove. Abigail sat quietly near the front, her mind still replaying the moment the flame died. Sheriff Morgan, broad-shouldered, gray-bearded, leaned forward. The lantern never failed, not once. If it went dark, something changed. A deep silence settled over the room. The storm outside howled, tapping snowflakes against the window panes like soft fingers. Old Mrs. Halpern, the town historian, adjusted her shawl and spoke in a trembling voice. "My grandfather told me the lantern wasn't from us. It was from the first travelers, a family lost in a blizzard. They lit a lantern to find their way back, but the storm took them. And since that night, the lantern has walked the path they couldn't finish." The room grew colder. Then Abigail stood. Her voice was gentle, but steady enough to cut through the hush. If the lantern guided others for so long, maybe now it needs someone to guide it. Eyes turned toward her. She explained what she had seen, the weak glow, the trembling flame, the moment it went dark in her hand. Sheriff Morgan narrowed his eyes. Fear hid behind his stern face. Fear not of the woods, but of disturbing something older than the town itself. Still, he nodded. And so, just past midnight, a small group gathered near the frozen creek. Sheriff Morgan with his lantern, Samuel with a walking stick, and Abigail, wrapped in a thick wool coat with her father's old compass. The sky was a deep velvet blue, sprinkled with stars that glimmered like distant fireflies. The only sound was the crunch of snow under their boots. They followed the creek upstream. The cold grew sharper, biting at their faces, creeping into their bones. But every few steps, Abigail swore she saw a faint pulse of golden light deep between the trees, there, then gone, as if guiding them. Branches arched overhead like the ribs of a great sleeping beast. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. After an hour of climbing the slope, they reached a clearing, a perfect ring of untouched snow surrounded by ancient pines. At its center lay something half-buried, a wooden frame, cracked and worn, as if abandoned for 100 years. It was the lantern, cold, extinguished, still. Abigail stepped forward slowly, as though approaching a memory. She brushed the snow gently away. The wood felt warm beneath her gloves, impossibly warm. A sudden soft breeze swept through the clearing, swirling snow around them. The sky seemed to darken. The forest pressed closer. Then, from somewhere deep in the woods, a faint whisper echoed, like the sigh of someone finally found, or finally free. The lantern in Abigail's hands glowed. A small spark appeared inside it, weak but real, like a heartbeat returning. Samuel gasped. Sheriff Morgan took a step back in awe. The glow spread over the clearing in soft gold. It illuminated tree trunks, branches, their breath in the air, all touched by the gentle light. Abigail felt warmth travel up her arms, peaceful and familiar, as though an unseen hand had placed its trust in hers. The flame in the lantern grew strong again, calm, steady, alive. The whisper faded, the forest exhaled, and the night settled once more. Samuel spoke first, voice trembling. It chose her. Abigail held the lantern close, its light dancing across her face. She didn't know what the lantern wanted or why it had dimmed, only that it wasn't finished, and now it had given its journey to her. The path back to Willow Creek glowed softly ahead, not lit by moonlight, but by the lantern.
The walk back toward Willow Creek felt different now, as if the valley itself was awake, watching Abigail carry the lantern through the trees. Its glow was warmer than before, casting long, golden shapes upon the snow, turning the forest path into something dreamlike and ancient. Samuel followed just behind her, his breath rising as soft clouds in the cold. Sheriff Morgan stayed a few steps back, his eyes scanning the shadows as though expecting the forest to whisper again. But no whispers came, only the sound of snow crunching beneath their boots, slow and steady, echoing gently between the trees. When the trio reached the edge of the town, the lantern in Abigail's hand flickered, not weakly, but almost playfully, like it recognized the place. Cabin windows glowed faintly along the creek. Smoke curled from chimneys. The quiet murmur of evening life drifted through the air. All of Willow Creek seemed to pause as the golden light approached. Mrs. Halpern stepped out of her home first, shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Her eyes widened at the sight of the glowing lantern. She whispered, "Merciful heavens, it came back!" People gathered one by one, men, women, children with blankets draped around them, rubbing sleep from their eyes as they watched the lantern return to the town it had watched over for generations. Sheriff Morgan stood beside Abigail. "He found it," he said, his deep voice carrying through the crowd. "It chose her." An uneasy hush fell. Children clung to their parents. The lantern's glow reflected in wide, curious eyes. Abigail felt dozens of gazes resting on her. A weight pressed softly upon her shoulders, not fear, but something much tenderer, responsibility. She lifted the lantern slightly. Its flame steadied, as if acknowledging the people it had protected for so long. "Why her?" someone whispered. "Because she listens," Mrs. Halpern replied, her voice calm and knowing. That night, Abigail placed the lantern on a wooden table beside her bedroom window. It cast warm light over her small room, over the books stacked neatly on her shelves, over the hand-sewn quilt on her bed, and over her father's old compass resting where she had left it. She sat by the window, watching snow fall gently outside. The river beyond the town glimmered faintly in the moonlight. Everything looked peaceful, but something within the lantern changed. Its flame leaned toward the window, as if pointing, guiding. Abigail blinked in surprise. The lantern wasn't resting, it was waiting. She wrapped herself in her coat once more and lifted the lantern carefully. The flame grew brighter, not blindingly, but with purpose. She stepped into the night. The town was silent now, asleep under blankets and warm fires. Only the river and the lantern accompanied her, their soft sounds blending like two parts of an ancient lullaby. The flame pulled her toward the creek. Step by step, she followed the glow. When she reached the edge of the water, the creek reflected the lantern perfectly, a shimmering path of light floating downstream. Abigail walked along it until she reached the old wooden bridge at the far end of town. It had stood for nearly a century, its beams worn smooth by weather and time. As she stepped onto its creaking planks, the lantern flickered again, twice, 3 times, in a slow, deliberate rhythm. She realized it wasn't flickering. It was signaling. A soft rumble beneath the ice made her heart jump. She held the lantern lower, and the glow crawled across the frozen creek, illuminating cracks hidden under the snow. The bridge shifted slightly, too slightly. Abigail backed away. The lantern's flame leaned toward the town, toward the homes where families slept peacefully. She understood. The bridge was failing. The heavy winter snow, the long years, it couldn't hold anymore. If someone crossed it, if a child ran across it tomorrow morning, the ice would crack, and the river below would swallow them whole. The lantern had warned her. Her breath quickened, but the lantern remained steady. Abigail raced back into town, its glow guiding her feet across the snow. She banged on door after door, calling for Sheriff Morgan. Lights flared in windows. People emerged wrapped in coats and blankets. When Abigail told them what she had seen, Sheriff Morgan wasted no time. They carried torches to the bridge and discovered the truth. Deep fractures under the snow, the wood shifting dangerously with every touch. Had Abigail not gone, had the lantern not guided her, a tragedy was waiting for morning. By dawn, the townspeople had blocked the bridge and begun rebuilding it. Stronger beams, fresh supports, sturdy ropes. The lantern hung nearby, glowing softly in approval. Word spread quickly through Willow Creek. The lantern didn't just guide lost travelers.
The days that followed felt different in Willow Creek. People walked a little slower, spoke a little softer. And every evening, as dusk rolled across the valley, eyes drifted toward Abigail's home, waiting to see if the lantern would glow again. It always did. Sometimes bright and warm, sometimes dim and thoughtful, as though it were breathing. By the 3rd night, Abigail noticed something else. The lantern didn't simply glow, it pulsed. Soft waves of golden light that rolled gently through her room like calm tides. She sat by her window, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, watching the flame move. Each pulse felt rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat, alive, present, listening. The town had started calling her the keeper of the lantern. It embarrassed her a little, but she couldn't deny it. Something had changed between her and the glow. She no longer felt like she was just watching it. It felt like the lantern was watching with her. That night, the flame leaned forward again, toward the door, toward the outside. Another call. Abigail wrapped herself in her heavy coat and stepped into the crisp evening air. The town lights flickered behind her as she moved toward the creek. Samuel, who had been helping rebuild the bridge, noticed her from a distance. "You're going back out?" he asked quietly. Abigail nodded. "The lantern wants to show something." Samuel tightened his scarf. "I'll come with you." Together they followed the glow as it cast a warm ribbon across the snow. The sky was clear, stars sparkling like frost scattered across velvet. The lantern led them past the rebuilt bridge, past the old schoolhouse, and toward the hill that overlooked the entire valley. Abigail paused. "No one goes up here at night," Samuel whispered. But the lantern's flame brightened, burning steady and sure. So they climbed. The higher they went, the quieter the world became, until only their footsteps and the faint hum of winter wind remained. At the top of the hill stood an old weathered cabin. Its wood had turned silver from age, its roof sagged slightly, and patches of frost clung to its window panes like thin lace. "This place," Samuel murmured. "It's been abandoned since I was a child." The lantern flickered, urging them closer. Abigail pushed the door gently. It creaked open, spilling warm golden light inside the dark cabin. Dust floated like tiny ghosts through the air. Old furniture stood where it had always been. A rocking chair, a wooden table, a bed covered in a thin blanket that hadn't been touched in decades. But something was there. Something neither of them expected. In the center of the room, on the table, lay an old journal. Leather-bound, edges cracked, its cover faintly imprinted with initials. A.L. Samuel frowned. "Doesn't ring a bell." But Abigail's breath caught. She traced the letters with her gloved fingers. Aaron Lorne. He was one of the first travelers who settled near Willow Creek. My grandmother told stories about him. "Isn't he the one who disappeared during the Great Blizzard?" She finished softly. The lantern's flame leaned over the journal, casting its glow onto the leather as if encouraging her to open it. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned the cover. Inside, the pages were yellowed, ink fading into soft browns and grays. But the words remained. She began to read aloud. December 14th, 1803. The storms grow worse. We cannot find our way. The lantern is all we have left. If it fails, we will never return. Abigail's heart tightened. Samuel stepped closer. Another entry followed. December 15th. If someone finds this, know that the lantern carries what we could not. If it reaches you, it means we did not make it back. The flame inside the lantern flickered, not weakly, but emotionally. Abigail felt warmth in her chest, like a quiet grief. She turned another page. December 16th. We lit the lanterns so others could follow our path. If our feet fail, let our light continue. The room fell silent. The lantern, their protector, their guide, was not just a mystery. It was a promise, a final act of hope from travelers lost to winter. Abigail closed the journal gently. Samuel swallowed hard. So, the lantern isn't haunted. It's carrying their memory. Abigail shook her head slowly. It's more than memory. It's continuing the journey they couldn't finish. Outside, wind drifted softly along the hill, rustling the old cabin walls. The lantern brightened, casting a warm, peaceful glow. Abigail lifted the journal to her chest and looked at the flickering flame. You kept your promise for over a century.
The flame warmed the room once more, a quiet acknowledgement. As they stepped out of the cabin, the valley spread beneath them in silver moonlight. Willow Creek glowed gently, a cluster.
The morning after the lantern saved Samuel Reed, Willow Creek woke with a strange, trembling hope. People gathered near the edge of the frozen water, staring at faint candle wax marks on the driftwood pieces still bobbing on the surface. Proof, quiet, undeniable proof, that the legend breathing through their town was no longer just a story whispered by elders. The sheriff, Damon Hale, a man carved from frontier winds and long winters, stood with his hands tucked behind his coat. He wasn't a believer, never had been. But even he couldn't shake the feeling that the lantern had appeared for a reason. A warning, perhaps, or the beginning of something greater. That night, the town held a small gathering beside the creek. A handful of families, mothers clutching their shawls, children wrapped in blankets, faces glowing in the firelight. They hoped the lantern would return, the way it had for decades. The wind was gentle, barely brushing the tops of the willows, and the creek ran smooth as polished stone. People waited. Minutes stretched into an hour. And then, a soft ripple, barely visible. A faint glow, deep in the bend of the creek, moving closer, slow, steady, warm. The lantern. But this time, it wasn't alone. Behind it, drifting just beneath the water's surface, was a second glow. Dimmer, cooler, almost silver. The townsfolk stepped back in fear. Two lights meant something new, something the elders never mentioned. Little Thomas McKinley, braver than the adults around him, leaned forward and whispered, "It's guiding someone again." And as his words had summoned a presence, a figure emerged from the tree line across the creek. Not a ghost, not a spirit, but a woman, wrapped in a cloak of frost, her boots torn by miles of wilderness. She stumbled once, twice, before falling to her knees. Damon leapt across the narrow bridge, snow crunching under his weight, and caught her before she collapsed fully. Her breaths were shallow, each one a soft cloud of ice, but she managed to whisper a single sentence. I followed the silver one. The silver light. A new lantern? A new guide? The townsfolk stood frozen, their eyes shifting from the woman to the drifting lights on the water. The golden lantern paused, its flame bending as if bowing, and then gently faded into darkness. The silver glow sank beneath the creek and vanished like moonlight swallowed by deep water. The crowd didn't speak, not for a long time, because everyone understood what they had just witnessed. The lanterns were changing, evolving, multiplying. They weren't bound to one story anymore, not tied to one lost traveler. They were adapting to the land, to danger, to the people who needed them. That night, the woman, who introduced herself as Helena Moore, was given a warm bed in the McKinley household. She spoke softly, her voice still brittle from cold, telling the townsfolk how she had wandered for days, lost after her group became separated, crossing a thick forest of snow-laden pines. She thought she would die. The storm swallowed every sense of direction. The cold bit into her bones. And then, when her vision blurred and her knees buckled in the freezing dark, a pale silver light appeared between the trees. She didn't question it. She simply followed. It glided ahead of her, always just close enough to chase, but never close enough to touch.
And then, hours later, she stumbled out of the forest and saw Willow Creek glowing with firelight. When she finished her story, silence fell again. Not fear, not confusion, something softer, something sacred. Because now Willow Creek knew the lanterns weren't relics of the past. They were protectors of the frontier, gentle watchers over a land too wild and roads too cruel for travelers walking alone. And as snow continued to drift outside, settling quietly over cabins and rooftops, one truth echoed through every household. The lanterns had chosen Willow Creek, and their presence was only just beginning.
The following days in Willow Creek felt different, as if the air itself carried a quiet humming, a soft awareness that something unseen walked alongside the living. People moved slower, listened more closely. Children lingered near the water's edge, hoping to catch a shimmer of silver or gold beneath the drifting ice. And Sheriff Damon Hale, the man who once dismissed the lantern tales, found himself waking early, walking alone along the creek before dawn, searching for any sign, a ripple, a reflection, a flicker of light beneath the frost. But the lanterns did not appear. Not for days, not for nights, almost as if they were waiting, watching, measuring the pulse of the town after revealing their growing presence. Helena Moore, now recovering, her strength returning, would sit by the hearth in the McKinley home, her eyes distant as she described the soft metallic glow that guided her through the storm. She would whisper, "I never felt alone. It wasn't like a light. It was like someone walking beside me, without footsteps." Her words traveled through the settlement faster than winter wind. Families spoke of building a small shrine near the creek, something simple, a wooden post with a lantern of their own hung in gratitude. But Damon, he felt something deeper stirring, a tug in his chest, a memory he had tried to bury. Because decades earlier, when Damon was just a young boy, his father had vanished in a winter storm exactly like the one Helena described. No body had been found, no tracks, no final message. Only Damon's mother had spoken softly of a glow she saw return that night, a faint golden shimmer that hovered outside their home before drifting away into the forest. Back then, Damon dismissed it as grief-born imagination. But now, seeing Helena, he wasn't so sure. Late one night, unable to quiet the restless weight in his chest, Damon walked down to the creek alone. The settlement behind him slept under thick blankets of snow, chimneys silent, world peaceful. The sky held no moon, only stars, clear, sharp, infinite. Damon stood near the water for a long time, breathing the cold, feeling the silence settle on his shoulders. And then, a whisper of motion. At first, he thought it was ice shifting, or the tail of a night breeze. But when he looked down, he saw it. A single golden shimmer, pulsing beneath the dark water. Soft, warm, alive. Damon kneeled, his breath fogging the surface as he leaned closer. The shimmer brightened, slow, deliberate, as if acknowledging him. Then another appeared, silver, cool, graceful. The two lights drifted side by side, moving with a strange harmony, their reflections dancing on the frozen edges of the creek, as though speaking a language older than the town itself. Damon's heart pounded, not with fear, but with the weight of a truth finally stepping into focus. The lanterns weren't just guides. They weren't simply protectors. They were watchers. Ancient, patient beings tied to the land, to the lost, to the forgotten. And for the first time, Damon felt certain that his father had not died alone in the storm. He had been guided, just like Helena, just like Samuel Reed. The lights pulsed softly, one gold, one silver, before drifting deeper, their glow fading into the black water as if disappearing into memory. Damon stayed kneeling even after the light vanished, the cold biting at his legs, but his mind warm with a realization that felt both heavy and peaceful. The lanterns were choosing people, saving people, watching people. And now they had revealed themselves to him. When Damon finally returned home, a new resolve settled in his bones. Calm, steady, unshakable. Because he understood something no one else in town yet realized. The lanterns were not done. They would return. And the next time they did, Willow Creek's destiny would change forever.
Winter tightened its grip around Willow Creek. Days became shorter, nights grew heavier, and a quiet stillness pressed against every cabin door. Yet beneath that stillness, something was shifting. A sense of waiting, a feeling that the lanterns were preparing for something larger than anyone understood. Damon Hale carried this awareness the strongest. He found himself listening for sounds he couldn't name. Soft hums in the wind, tiny ripples on the creek, the faintest flicker of light beneath ice that disappeared when stared at too directly. Every evening, he walked the water's edge, boots sinking in snow, coat brushing frost-kissed branches. He didn't call out to the lanterns. He simply waited, the way a man waits for truth to step out of shadow. One dusk, as the horizon bled orange into deep blue, Helena Moore joined him. She moved slowly, still regaining her strength, but her eyes held a quiet certainty. They came to me again last night, not in the forest, in a dream. Damon turned. Dreams can feel real after what you've been through. She shook her head gently. No, this was different. The silver one, it wasn't guiding me. It was showing me something. Damon felt a shiver, not from cold, but from the weight of her words. What did it show you? Helena took a slow breath. A place, not far from here, a clearing in the woods. There was snow, tall pines, and a stone, large, flat, old. The lantern hovered over it, like it was waiting for someone to see. Damon's jaw tightened. He knew the place, a clearing used by early settlers long before Willow Creek even had a name. A place tied to stories his father once whispered on winter nights by firelight. He looked at Helena. We're going there, first thing tomorrow. But morning never came the way they expected, because deep in the night, long after lanterns in every home had been blown out, a sound echoed across Willow Creek, a soft ringing hum,
like a candle flame vibrating in the still air, like metal singing in the dark. People woke, one by one, eyes opening slowly, hearts beating faster without understanding why. Damon rose instantly, the sound pulling him from sleep as though someone had spoken his name. He stepped outside into the freezing night and froze. Dozens of golden lights floated over the creek, not drifting on the water, floating in the air. Some small as fireflies, others bright as lantern flame, all shimmering with gentle pulses as if breathing. Then he saw them. Silver lights. Fewer in number, but brighter, their glow cool and sharp like moonlight on a blade. The lights moved in a slow, deliberate pattern, forming a path that led directly into the forest Helena had described. Within moments, doors opened across the settlement. Families stepped out, wrapped in blankets and coats, their faces lit with awe and trembling wonder. The lights waited, not urging, not pushing, just waiting, as if offering a choice. Damon stepped forward first. He turned to the people behind him. You don't have to follow. No one is asking you to. From the far end of the group, old Martha Collins tightened her shawl and whispered, "They've protected us for generations. If they're calling, I think we should listen." Helena came beside Damon, her breath fogging the air, her eyes locked on the silver lights. They want to show us something. They chose tonight. Damon nodded slowly. Then we follow. One by one, people stepped behind them, a quiet procession moving through the snow as the lantern lights glided ahead, weaving a path between towering pines. The forest felt alive, branches whispering, shadows shifting, snowflakes falling in slow spirals as if time itself had softened. Deeper and deeper they walked, until the trees thinned and the clearing appeared, exactly as Helena had described. At its center lay a stone, flat, ancient, its surface partly buried beneath ice and snow. The lanterns surrounded it. The clearing fell silent, so silent that even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Damon stood frozen before the stone, his gloved hand resting on the rough surface, fingers trembling as he traced the carved letters, weathered by decades, softened by time, yet unmistakably his father's name. Thomas Hale. The lanterns hovered close, their glow warm and steady, as if they understood that this moment was heavier than the cold air around them. Helena slowly approached, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Damon, this means he reached this place." Damon swallowed hard. He carved his name. He was alive long after the search ended. His voice cracked, a sound the people of Willow Creek had never heard from him. Behind them, the townsfolk stood in a quiet circle, heads bowed, their breath rising like small ghosts into the night. No one dared speak, no one dared intrude, because something sacred was happening, a bond being stitched back together between past and present, between father and son. Damon brushed more snow from the stone, revealing a faint line beneath the name. Not a sentence, not a date, just one small symbol. A lantern, carved with the same hand. Damon stepped back, eyes widening, heart pounding with a new understanding. His father had seen it too. The lantern, the golden glow that had saved countless travelers. He hadn't carved this in fear, but in thanks. As Damon stared, the surrounding lantern lights began to shift. Slowly, gently, they drifted downward, forming a soft, breathing halo around the stone. Then something extraordinary happened. One golden light, slightly brighter than the rest, floated forward. It hovered inches from Damon's face, its glow warm, steady, pulsing like a heartbeat. Damon didn't step back. He lifted a hand, hesitated, then let his palm drift closer. The lantern responded, not with heat, not with flame, but with memory. A vision unfurled, gentle as fog rising over the creek. Damon saw the forest of years ago, snow falling heavy, his father stumbling through the dark. The man was weak, shivering, lost, but not alone. A golden lantern drifted before him, leading him through the storm, guiding every step, saving him from unseen dangers, from frozen ravines, from the suffocating depths of winter. Damon's breath hitched as he watched his father reach this very clearing, collapse beside the stone, and carve his name with shaking hands. The vision softened. Damon watched his father lie back, eyes closing, a small, peaceful smile touching his face, not the smile of a dying man, but one who knew he was finally safe, surrounded, protected. The lantern rested beside him until the darkness took him gently. Then the vision faded. The lantern's glow dimmed back to normal, floating quietly before Damon, as if giving him time to steady his trembling heart. When Damon opened his eyes again, tears gathered silently at the edges. Not tears of grief alone, but of gratitude. He spoke in a cracked whisper. He wasn't alone. He swallowed. He didn't die lost. They were with him, just like they were with Helena, just like they were with Samuel. Helena laid a hand on his shoulder, quiet, solid, human. You finally know the truth. Damon nodded slowly. But why show us now? His voice was softer now, filled with wonder instead of disbelief. The lanterns pulsed, a soft, steady glow, as though answering without words. And then the silver lights began to rise, higher, higher still, until they hovered above the clearing, forming a shimmering crescent against the night sky. The golden lights followed, a warm, glowing mirror to the silver arc. Together, they created a shape that Damon had seen in old frontier journals, carved into abandoned outposts, etched in the oldest wood of Willow Creek cabins. A circle of protection, a mark of guardianship. These lanterns were not aimless spirits, not wandering lights, not relics of broken stories. They were watchers of the frontier, ancient, enduring, bound to the land and to the people who called it home. And tonight, they were making something clear. A change was coming. Something larger than a single storm, larger than a traveler saved in the dark, larger than any legend Willow Creek had whispered. The lanterns were preparing, gathering, strengthening. Damon stared upward, awestruck. What are they getting ready for?